I am my breath. And you say that silently to yourself, and you feel when you're inhaling that you're taking in the breath of the Amazon, of the Andes Mountains, of the high mountains in Europe, of Iceland, the ice in the North Pole, of the ice in the South Pole, of the great forest of the Sahara. I am my breath. And you practice that to remind yourself that you're not your car or your spouse or your name or your title or your book that you just finished. You are your breath, your spirit. And a spirit, you can become anything, but you're not attached or defined or trapped or possessed by what you have or by what you're going to lose at the moment of death.
Dr. Alberto Villoldo, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited and passionate about in your life right now?
Thank you, Emilio. Good to be with you. What I'm most excited, most passionate about right now is being here with you. And that's
too,
what I
brother.
usually try to get most excited and passionate about, is whatever I'm engaged with, because I don't engage with things that I'm not passionate about.
I agree. And I share that sentiment, brother. I wanted to start off that there's been a lot of prophecies going on from the ancient shamans of the Americas. And one of them is about a period of great transformation. And these shamans, or these Laika, the master shamans, are foretelling of new humans that are appearing on the planet. Persons of wisdom and power who live free of fear and abide in their eternal nature, accepting stewardship for all of creation. I would love to start off with you talking about these new humans that are appearing on the planet and what you're seeing from an outside perspective looking in. What's going on right now in the world?
Did I write that?
That was in the book, yes. The Heart of a Shaman.
Good.
Yes.
No wonder it looked familiar. Okay, good. You know, let me point out a couple of interesting events that are happening as we live today. We're in the middle of an extinction event. As all of us know, this is the 5th great extinction event since the dawn of life in the planet. The previous one was 65 million years ago, when a gigantic meteorite struck the Earth and killed off 99% of species. We're in the middle of the 5th one, and it's happening so rapidly. It started about 20 years ago. And during these extinction events, what happens is that nature takes the foot off of the brake and steps on the evolutionary accelerator. So during ordinary times, non-extinction events, evolution is gradual, incremental. It follows the laws of Newtonian physics. During extinction events, evolution follows the laws of quantum physics. It's no longer in between generations, but within generations. You and I, all of us listening, can take a quantum leap to become that new human, to uncoil our DNA code, another twist, and express qualities and attributes and powers that are extraordinary. So we have to take advantage of this moment, or we might become extinct, or big swatches of humanity might. If we don't make this leap to become that new human, we're going to be swallowed up by what we call stress and inability to adapt to change. So we got to see this as a tremendous opportunity happening today. And it's coinciding, I don't know how much you follow astrology, but Pluto has a very big orbit, 250 years to go to make a complete orbit around the sun. Pluto has just come into Aquarius. Every 20 years it changes house. Pluto is the lord of death, of the underworld, plutonium, Hades, and it's just come into Aquarius, which is the house of flourishing. Those seeds that we have planted deep in our hearts and in our souls have the opportunity to flourish over the next 20 years. Really critical moment that's culminating right now as we live, as we speak. So today it's not an option. You either get to be part of the experiment of becoming the new human that the prophecies speak about, Homo Luminous, or if you don't want to be part of the experiment, if you don't want to become the new human, guess what? You get to be in the control group. And the control group is the rest of humanity, how humanity gets old and lives and dies and sick. The big fat part of the bell curve, that's the control group, is not pretty. So this is the opportunity we have today. And the ancients foresaw this critical time in the planet and announced some beautiful possibilities for us as a humanity, for the people that choose to be part of the experiment.
And we know that Mother Earth goes through a lot of different cycles. Some, you mentioned a larger 1,000-year cycle, some which are 250 years. There's one cycle that one of your mentors, Don Miguel Quispe, spoke about, and he explained to you of the Pachakuti, the Great Upheaval. And this is a 500-year cycle. So this seems like, the last one was when the Conquistador Pizarro, 1531, entered the region of Peru. And we all know what happened after that. And we're approaching now, when I add up the 500, the year 2030 comes up. So what are you foreseeing in the next, 5 years with this Pachakuti cycle that your mentor explained to you about?
And remember that this Pachakuti, Pacha means earth or time, and Kuti means to turn over. To turn over time is the time of a new beginning. That these don't strike like lightning. They're more like a hurricane that the winds begin to pick up a decade before, and then it gets increasingly accelerated. And during those times, you want to be in the eye of the hurricane. You don't want to be outside in one of the 200-kilometer-an-hour winds. So this is what's going on right now. But the tipping point is going to be in the next 5 or 6 years as it becomes irreversible. So many of us are postponing. I tell my students, don't wait until you get sick to begin to get healthy. Don't wait until a crisis to begin to step up your evolution or your being in this planet. Do it now, because when a crisis hits, you want to have the resilience to become creative and to see opportunity where everybody else is seeing death and destruction. So the Pachakuti is actually happening right now. Not in 8 years, 7 years, but right now. But the winds will continue to intensify, and they'll begin to touch each one of our lives personally, our relationships, our health, our spiritual journeys. And if you don't align your life with who you are becoming, then you're going to default to the fate that you inherited in your genes and in the drama that you inherited from your family. So we got to craft a new story for humanity today. And we are the ones that are doing that for ourselves first and then for humanity in general. Otherwise, we default to what we learned when we were kids, which was not really the best kind of learning in the world.
Yeah. And we've been talking about time a lot here with the cycles and the years and the thousands of years. But one thing I learned about you and going deeper into your work is that these shamans, they see time very differently than most Western minds. They see it as a river of time where they can go back in time and retrieve things from the past and even go into the future and have these prophecies, these visions. So how do they actually sit with time and be able to play around with it like they do in these cultures?
So there's been some very interesting scientific experiments done about 100 years ago. It began with watchmakers in Switzerland. And the clock makers, they had, the pendulum clocks and the cuckoo clock would come out. And if you put 100 clocks in a room, each one of them wound at a different time, at a different rhythm. Within a week, all of them would be in rhythm with each other. So time seems to be a phenomenon associated with humanity and with life, with biological life. But let me go a little bit deeper into this, if I may, because we only have one notion of time, which is the timeline, which is the past always moving us towards the future. It's called the arrow of time. So we only have one kind of time, which is linear time. And the problem with this kind of time is that you're always the product of the past, the product of your genetics, of your family of origin, of your trauma. Our belief about time does not permit us to be the product of the future, of who we're becoming. And the shamans understand that the future, that you can access the future, that it can reach back like a giant hand and move you towards a future state of health or of success or of whatever it is that you set out to find for yourself, as long as it's for the greater good. That's the caveat. But can I go a little bit deeper into this?
Of course, as deep as you want, brother.
All right. So here, for us, when I was an anthropologist in the Amazon, as a medical anthropologist, I would go to villages in the backwaters of the jungle. And I would ask them, tell me the first story ever told. Because there was always a first story ever told. What was your first story? And that would reveal so much about what the beliefs and the qualities of the village was. But if you look at our first story ever told, our first story is about the division of space. On day one, God separated the waters above from the waters below, and day two, the waters from the dry land, the division of space. If you look at the Mayan story of creation, the story of creation for the Mayan is about the division of time. So they have 23 different calendars, and some of them are only 20 days long, and some of them are 60 billion years long. 23 different calendars. We have only one. So our Western notion of time being singular and flowing only in one direction is only a belief structure. It's not supported by science. It's not, the laws of physics work equally well, whether time flows from the future to the past or the other direction or multiple directions at once. So for a Mayan sage or elder or shaman, you not only are able to track back along a patient's timeline where the threads of possibilities wrap themselves into a rope to find an event that derailed their destiny, a trauma that could have occurred in a former life, and then recover that soul part and reinstall it in their clients so they could do a soul recovery or soul retrieval. But you can also do a destiny retrieval. You can also journey forward along that timeline and look at the many threads of possibilities. In one of them, you die young. In another one, you live long and healthy. In another one, you move to a different country. And then spirit can help you select that timeline out of the thousands, millions of possibilities of choices that you have. That's what we have, is the ability to choose. Then you can craft a destiny for yourself that is not created by the story of your past. You can write a new story of your destiny. And this is what the shamans learned how to do. And when they did that, they became time masters. You acquired mastery of time.
I relate to this a lot because I am a huge Marvel Comics fan. And this really, it seems like Hollywood is catching up to the shamanic wisdom right now because of the concepts of the multiverse, as you're saying. And there's a moment when Doctor Strange, the master of the mystic arts, he's looking at all the infinite possibilities because he has the time stone. And he's seeing which are the possibilities where, they defeat Thanos that wants to end the world. So where are, these writers in Hollywood getting their information from? You start asking yourself, because it's very similar to what you're saying about the multiple realities that we have access to. Do you see them as possibilities or more as realities that are are ongoing right now, but we can choose which doorway we walk through, essentially.
Yeah, the multiple simultaneous reality equation. The problem with that is that it means that there's a set of infinite realities that are co-created every moment. And but it really doesn't matter which model you work with, whether the multiple realities or the probabilities theory. The important thing is to show up for your highest possible destiny. And that requires that you remember that agreement that you made with spirit before you were born. What did you come here to do in this world? So many of us are looking for meaning right now. The search for meaning is actually flawed, it's futile. You're never going to find meaning. Never going to find the meaning of your life or your purpose. You got to find mission. What is the mission that you came here to serve? And then meaning and purpose will wrap itself around that. But our Western psychology is fundamentally designed to disempower you, to make us victims, and to help us understand intellectually why we cannot do something. And the rule in the spiritual world is that you can either have what you want or the reasons why you can't. So this is where the shamans of old learned that we co-create, that we select the door that we walk through. And we can select it not as an intellectual choice, but being guided by our sense of mission and of destiny. And that's called dreaming the world into being.
And you talked briefly about these stories of the Mayans. And right now my research is lying more toward the realm of the creation stories from the Sumerian tablets and how they talk about these beings that came from the stars. They called them in their language, or the translation is the Anunnaki. I'm curious to know if in shamanic cultures they also share that cosmovision of the beings that came from out there, from the stars that seeded us here on this planet.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember being in one of the holy mountains in Peru with the Andean elders. And we met a group of French UFO explorers. And they were asking, have you seen any lights in the sky going across the sky? No. Have you seen any lights moving in one direction and changing direction very rapidly? No. Any strange objects in the sky? No. And then I asked the shamans, we saw all of those things last night. And they said, yeah, but we don't like those that come in buses. And I go, what do you mean buses? Because they call anything mechanical a bus, a school bus. And so we like the ones that are able to part the folds of space and time and step through these windows. Those are the ones they're called the Inca, the luminous ones from other realms and from other dimensions. And of course, the whole Inca mythology is about the Pleiades and our relationship to the Pleiades. And the fact that the Pleiades is what sets the clock. The biological clock in humans is set by melatonin, the release of melatonin in the brain. That sets your biological clock to whatever time zone you're in. But the biological clock of the Andean peoples is set by the rising of the Pleiades, again, above the horizon. And when the stars rise above the horizon in the middle of summer, June 21st, the first light of the stars goes into the glacier, and the shamans hike up to 21,000 feet. And they carve the ice that has captured the light of the Pleiades, and then they take it to each of their villages and give it to the people, the light of the stars, the body of the light. So the connection to the stars is very palpable and present.
Yeah. And so these beings that were sort of weaving into the fabric of reality, those would be more like interdimensional beings that have visited before?
No, they can be in the same realm and dimension that we're in, but they don't need to travel through physical space to get to where they're going. They can space warp. So, and this is stuff that seems like science fiction to us, But I remember the first time I was in the Amazon, I was a young man in my 20s, and I was photographing and filming. I had a nice Nikon camera, but I also had a little Polaroid camera, point and shoot, and it would print out a little photograph. I don't know if you've ever seen or heard of one of these. So before I was allowed to take a picture of anything or anyone, I would take a little Polaroid shot, and you would kind of hold it in the breeze for a moment or two, and after a minute there would be the person's picture, and I would give them their soul back, and they go, "Wow, how did you do this?" And to them it was science fiction. To us it was just a quick
a camera.
developing camera. Yeah. So this kind of transportation for us, it looks like magic, but it's actually science to them.
You briefly mentioned about the glaciers, and ice and the element of the ice is right now something that's emerging more and more popularized in mainstream culture. But I know that the ancient cultures, the indigenous cultures, have a deep connection with the ice. You even had to dive into a freezing laguna to go kiss a glacier as part of one of your initiations. So what can we learn right now from, let's say, sort of the shamanic perspective of ice and how it can heal the body as well?
Yeah, I think that there's it's very popular right now to go and submerge yourself in ice water. I've done it. I think that our bodies they're not prepared for this. Our bodies have become sluggish. We're full of toxins, but it does reset the body. If your body is not polluted, it's extraordinary what going into the ice water for 10 minutes can do, or for 3 minutes, or even going into a chamber where you go to minus 200 degrees centigrade and with liquid nitrogen for 3 minutes. It's an amazing reset of the vagus nerve and of the fight or flight system. And for us in the West, most of us have had our fight or flight system in the on position, because we've had situations we couldn't fight or we couldn't run away from, and then we ended up being in freeze mode. It's fight, flight, or freeze. And so many of us are frozen. And an experience like this, like the Wim Hof experiences, going into ice water, or even can help you reset, get you out of freeze mode, and get the body's immune system to work optimally again. The problem is that the head gets in the way. So if you want to try something at home, today or tomorrow morning, take a morning shower, nice warm shower, and then at the end of your shower, I want you to place your hand on the handle of the shower and understand that you're going to turn it to cold and spend 10 seconds in the cold. But see what happens the moment you place your hand on the handle. You begin to freak out, even though it's still warm water. The mind is getting in the way. That's called suffering. When you turn the water all the way to cold, that's called pain. But suffering is what the mind anticipates is going to happen to you. And this is where the shamans learn to retrain the mind, because suffering is caused by fear. And if you learn to temper your fear, if you learn to turn fear into your ally, that's a source of power, where fear becomes love, becomes generosity, then you can achieve what the shamans of old discovered that they could do, which was to escape time, to break free from time, to drop in between the moments, so that they could become what were known as the death defiers, the ones that journeyed beyond death and took their consciousness with them in the journey beyond death.
So now that we got into the deep topic of death, I know that, for many years of your life, you had a sort of resistance to the death process. And I know that now you have a complete different understanding of what it means, what the purpose is. If you want to illuminate a little bit of what death is, and what the purpose is, and why we should confront it right now in this life.
We've all had experiences with ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is the visionary vine of the shamans of the Amazon. And the word Aya means death. And Huasca means a rope. So it's a rope that takes you beyond death, but it takes you through an experience of the underworld. So when you go back to the Sumerian, I know you like the Sumerian mythology very much, you find the story of the goddess, the most ancient goddess of Inanna, that has to go to the underworld to discover who she is and be stripped of everything that she identified with, her necklaces, her jewelry, her cloak, her clothing, even her name. And this is what death is going to do. Death is going to, you're going to lose your car, you're going to lose your house, your spouse, your dog, even your name. So the initiations had to do with discovering who you were without all of the outer forms, without needing the outer forms to inform you. And then you could become free. Then you did not need to have a title, a gender, a name to define you. And you could make that journey beyond death, or that ayahuasca journey into luminosity, and bring back the gifts. Because what happens with these tremendous medicine plants is that frequently our brain, the hardware, cannot support the tremendous learning and the tremendous gifts that we receive. We need to upgrade the hardware to run the software for human 2.0.
Homo Luminous, right?
Precisely.
And, in your books, you've mentioned about the primordial light and how everything arises from that primordial light. And the shamans understand that very deeply. Even things like illnesses is just a disturbance in the energetic field that we have. And what new capacities, or how is humanity upgrading right now into what is Homo Luminous that you mentioned?
This is what my last two books have been about. The humans, dolphins, and whales are only 3 species out of 40 million. These 3 species are the only ones that don't have a death program in their DNA. Every other species in the planet, 39.999 million, have a death program. The minute you're not able to make babies anymore, nature eliminates you. There are no grandmothers in nature. There's no menopause in nature. It doesn't exist, except in humans, whales, and dolphins. So a grandmother orca will teach the young how to communicate and how to hunt and create families and pods. They don't have a death program. We don't have a death program. We have great-grandmothers alive today. 40 years after you're not making babies anymore, after your mid-30s, they're women that happily live to be 80 years old, and they're not eliminated by nature. We're taking part in an experiment in longevity. That's one of them. One of the gifts and qualities is the ability to have a long and healthy life. The shaman's ideal is to live long, die quick. Instead of living long, die slowly over 20 years with, bedridden in a wheelchair connected to tubes. We're taking part in an experiment of taking our health with us for the rest of our lives, of growing a new body, because we know how to do it. That was the title of my most recent book, Grow a New Body. We know how to do it. We did it once. We're living evidence, and we grow a new body every 7 years. So how do you grow a new body that's resilient and that's creative and original mentally, that's not forgetting the names of your grandchildren, where you can not only keep up with technology, but really learn how to use it creatively, where you can dream your health and your life and your destiny into being? So this is the greatest gift, is the awakening of a higher brain called the neocortex, the new brain that appeared around 300,000 years ago. And if we don't awaken that new brain, we're not going to develop the abilities of Homo Luminous, because that new brain is the one that creates psychosomatic health, the one that dreams your world into being, that creates synchronicities. So synchronicities is when you look at your clock and it's 4:44. or 1212. And this is not a moment of, man, I'm in tune with life. No, this is the universe inviting you to co-create. And at that point, you can really, truly have free will. You're no longer, your future is not dictated by your fate or by your genes or by the drama in your family or by, you begin to realize that things don't happen to you anymore. Things stop happening to you. They begin to happen for you. Even the terrible, the difficult things. This happened for me. What's the universe offering me as a lesson today? And then you understand that we're truly living the dream, that this also is a dream. And I'm going to share with you a dreaming exercise that we can do to have an experience of this. Because remember, this is talk. The experience is really what counts. It's a dreaming practice of the shaman. So basically, you take a glass of water with very little water in it. And then before you go to sleep, you hold the glass of water and you instruct your body mind, I'm going to drink half of this glass now. And when I wake up, I'm going to drink the other half and my dreams will come back to me. And then when you wake up, you drink the other half. And after you do this a few days, you begin to remember your dreams. And then you want to begin to dream lucidly. So the next step is to hold the glass of water before you go to sleep, give the same instructions to your body mind, and then look for the glass of water in one of your dreams and drink it in the dream. So you wake up inside the dream. And then the third step is that every time you go out to lunch with friends and you have a glass of water on the table and you drink a sip of water, you want to wake up in this dream and understand that we're co-creating, we're dreaming reality into being all the time. And that's when it gets interesting. But the only brain that can do that is the higher brain. The lower brain is still living in fear. It's predatory. It lives in scarcity. It lives in what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? So we have to activate the higher brain. And that's where the diet and the nutrition and ketosis and burning fats for fuel instead of burning sugar for fuel. Because we have to break down that body-mind divide. We think that the mind can function without the body, but you need the neurotransmitters. You need the correct brain chemicals. And once you can wake up the higher brain, what the higher brain will begin to do is that the pineal gland in the higher brain, its only job that we know in science is to produce melatonin so you can sleep. But melatonin is made from serotonin. And serotonin is manufactured in your gut. And the formula for serotonin is 5-HT, 5-hydroxy water tryptamine. It's a tryptamine. So serotonin gets to the brain, the pineal gland goes, great, let's make some melatonin. And if you're not producing a lot of stress molecules by your lower brain, if you're not in fight or flight, if you're not producing cortisol and adrenaline, and you're not living fearfully in the grip of fear, then the higher brain will take serotonin, 5-HT, a tryptamine, and add a couple of methyl bonds to it. And it'll become dimethyltryptamine. And this is DMT. This is ayahuasca. Your brain produces it naturally. And once you begin to methylate, to add methyl bonds to serotonin, you have the experience of oneness, of communion. You realize that we're living in a ceremony. This is a plant medicine ceremony we're living in. But you can guide it. And we can co-create beautifully together instead of being at the mercy of the lower brain that lives in fear, that needs enemies, that lives in war, that says, this is my land. And that is ruling the planet, unfortunately, right now. So there's a brain chemistry that accompanies everything that we've been talking about. And we got to begin with the biology. You got to begin with the serotonin precursors so that your gut can manufacture serotonin so that you can repair the brain, repair the hippocampus so you can turn on the higher brain so you can get high. The brain loves to get high.
Mm. And, Alberto, what you're really saying is a lot of people will go straight into their spiritual practice, or they want to go to the jungles of Peru and have all these, visions and experiences without that healed brain, without fixing their diet. So, it's a preliminary process. What you're showing right now is fix your brain with the diet, with the neurochemicals, all of that stuff before going straight to, can I communicate with the aliens right now? Yeah. We talked about the higher functioning brain. Is there a higher functioning heart, and what does that look like?
Yeah, thank you for pointing out that you got to upgrade the brain. I mean, go to Peru, go to the Amazon, it's amazing. But if you had an ayahuasca ceremony on Sunday and Tuesday you forgot what you talked to God about, then go back and upgrade the brain. And when I first did my ayahuasca ceremonies, we had to do what was called the dieta. And the dieta lasted 2 weeks of detoxification, of providing the neurotransmitter support for the brain. I later understood that that's what they were doing. So that's a really, really important point. Now, curiously, the heart has 100 million neurons in it. It has its own brain. And the heart creates the most powerful electromagnetic field in your body. And the heart is the drummer. The heart is the rhythm keeper. Pásame el tambor. So the heart is the one that sets the rhythm to the entire body. So that if you have the drummer working for you, everything comes into rhythm. All of your different systems come into rhythm. And I'll show you how that happens.
Oh, a drum appeared out of nowhere.
So the heart is the drummer. And let's inhale deeply. And I want to guide you through a breathing practice of inhaling to a count of 4, of holding the breath to a count of 4, exhaling to 4, and empty to 4. I know the drum is creating a lot of distortion, so I'm going to put it aside, but let's do the breathing practice together. Inhaling deeply. Exhaling. And before we do it, I'm going to ask you to count your breaths. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I'm going to ask you to see how many breaths you take naturally, not yogic deep breaths, just normal, regular breaths in 30 seconds, so we can then multiply by 2. Start. Just regular breaths, no deep yogic breaths. And most of us end up taking between 12 and 16 breaths a minute. This is the kind of breathing you do when you're in the hamster wheel. So this is the very hyper excited breathing of fight or flight. And stop. And now multiply it by 2. And you'll see that you're probably in that range. 12. How many did you have, Emilio?
I had 8 or 9, so 16.
Good. Okay, you've got a lower reset. Oh, you had 8 or 9, so you're 16. Now we're gonna learn to lower our breath to that place where you can activate the higher brain. Because the breath is, you cannot stop breathing. It's an autonomic function, but you can regulate how quickly you breathe. So, nature's always experimenting. Dolphins don't have breathing as an autonomic function in their brain. That's why the dolphin brain has to take a breath and exhale and go, that felt really nice. I think I'll try another one. That's why half of their brain sleeps while the other half of their brain continues breathing. And if they're not happy in the amusement park, they'll go to the deep end of the pool and settle to the bottom and decide to stop breathing. We cannot stop breathing.
And it's like they're suicide or...
Yeah, they commit suicide. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
they can do that. We cannot do that. We can try. We can try to hold our breath, but you won't be able to.
Unless we're drowning.
Yeah. So let's hay otro tambor por ahí. Let's do that breathing exercise together. So it's going to be inhaling to a count of 4, holding the breath full to the count of 4, exhaling to a count of 4, and empty to 4. And I have another drum. And this one doesn't create distortion. So let's take a deep breath together. And exhale. And another one. And exhale. And now inhaling to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhaling to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And empty to 4. 3, 4. Inhaling to 4. 2, 3, 4. Holding to 4. 3, 4. Exhaling to 4. And empty to 4. 2, 3, 4. Inhaling to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhaling to 4. 3, 4. And empty to 4. 2, 3, 4. Inhaling to 4. 2, 4. Holding to 4. 2, 3, 4. Exhaling to 4. 2, 3, 4. And empty to 4. 3, 4. Inhaling to 4. 3, 4. Holding to 4. 2, 3, 4. Exhaling to 4. 2, 3, 4. And empty to 4. 3, 4. Inhale deeply. And exhale. And here you were taking about 2.5, almost 3 breaths, between 2 and 3 breaths per minute. So you're off the hamster wheel and you're resetting the rhythm, the heart rhythm begins to reset, but even more than the heart rate, your heart rate variability begins to reset. And you're able to go into that healing state or that deep state where you can begin to self-regulate all of the systems in your body. This is the key. If you go into a bucket of ice water, into a pool of ice water, you do the Wim Hof, cut a hole in the ice and go into the water, you gotta reduce your breathing rate. Otherwise, you're still feeding your fight or flight system. If you want to reset, you've got to breathe between 2 to 3 breaths per minute. This is an ancient shamanic breathing practice. And it was actually taken over, but is used commonly now by special forces teams in the US, Germany, around the world, because it resets your fear system. So that if you're in a mission and there's a lot of bullets flying around you, you're naturally, a little bit excited. So you want to reset. You don't want to be in fear so you can make clear decisions. And this breathing practice resets your vagus nerve, gets you out of freeze mode so you can act. And they're using it very effectively. It's called the 4-4-4 breath or the box breathing, but it's a very powerful practice for you to reset your physiology, to take control of your biology again. Because right now, it's being controlled by the news feeds and the media and the social media and the movies, and keeping us in a staccato, highly alerted state that becomes exhausting for the body and doesn't allow you to explore the inner realms. And it keeps you locked into fight or flight. Fight or flight, continuous stimulation, produces the release of dopamine. And dopamine is that feel-good chemical that says, hey, I want more, give me more. Serotonin says, that was great, wow, that was fantastic. Dopamine says, yeah, I love that cigarette. Give me another one. Give me more. Give me more social media. Give me more engagement. So we have to reset our internal systems so that we are working from a very deeply sacred place and not from the hyperstimulated state that most of humanity lives in today.
And there was another practice. I mean, if we're looking at the root of breath in Spanish, respirar, is very close to spirit. And you've mentioned before that our breath in many ways is the spirit. And you have a practice where when you inhale, you're saying I am, and then exhale, you're saying the breath. And how does that help us navigate to life after death if we're recognizing that the breath essentially is the essence of who we are right now?
Yeah, you know, in English, even inspiration, and you expire. When you expire, you die. That's what expiration means. The expiration date. We all have an expiration date that's programmed.
The last exhale, the last breath out.
That's right. And you want to be sure that you select the expiration date. It's not stamped on you by society, by culture, by the experiment, by the control group. So yeah, this is a practice of recognizing that you are your breath, you are spirit. So let me take you to a little bit of anthropology, because you know I'm a medical anthropologist by training, and for a long time directed a small neuroscience laboratory in California at the San Francisco State University at the biology department. And first, a fun story. When I was a kid, like many kids, I could see the invisible world. And it was scary. To me, it was natural, but I could see spirits. And then I remember one time we had an uncle that died, and there was a family lunch a few weeks later. And I said, "Oh, Uncle Howard is here, and he's come back for his wife, Estella." And then Estella would pass away a couple of days later. So my family said, "Don't ever say that again. Don't even comment anything about dead people." You know, because the ability to see dead people is not, kind of won't get you into college. But when I was directing the brain laboratory, the neuroscience lab, the only laboratory space that I could get in the biology department was where they kept the brains. And lab space is very difficult to get at a university. So I had the place where the brains were kept, and I had 200 brains, pickled brains in jars all around me. And I was a young man in my early 30s, and I was working late one night because we were doing experiments on how we could go into ice and produce the chemicals in the brain, the endorphins that would allow you to temper the experience of the cold. So I was taking notes and working on our design, and it was black, it was dark. I had a lamp lit in the table, and I look up in the dark and I look carefully, and there are 5 beings, 5 spirits are there, 5 people. And they were standing upright underneath their brains. And I'm going, what am I seeing? And then one of them speaks to me, and I hear their voice in my head, and they said, "Is this the place of judgment? And are you an angel? Are you," because I had a white laboratory coat on, and you put these things on so you don't get your clothing dirty. So they said, "Are you an angel? Are you here to judge us? Is this the place of judgment?" And I said, "No, this is room 402 in the biology department." So
wow,
this is what happens when we don't learn how to die consciously. We remain attached to a brain that got pickled somewhere, or to a body that's decaying somewhere. So many of the lessons of the shamans, especially this practice of I am my breath, are designed so that when you take your last breath, you can set it free. And if all of us really have had the chance of being with somebody who's dying, a loved one, a parent, a relative, and when they die overly medicated, they'll frequently go, and try to hold on to the breath instead of releasing the spirit, expiring. So the practice is you inhale, I am my breath. I am my breath. And you say that silently to yourself, and you feel when you're inhaling that you're taking in the breath of the Amazon, of the Andes Mountains, of the high mountains in Europe, of Iceland, the ice in the North Pole, of the ice in the South Pole, of the great forest of the Sahara. I am my breath. And you practice that to remind yourself that you're not your car or your spouse or your name or your title or your book that you just finished. You are your breath, your spirit. And a spirit, you can become anything. But you're not attached or defined or trapped or possessed by what you have or by what you're going to lose at the moment of death.
And it's so fascinating because the Laika, the master shamans, they have mastered this ability of going into the next life and being so aware that they are passing through, that they are able to choose at will where they will reincarnate. And most of us don't have that option, if I'm correct. How have you managed that concept of reincarnation and how they can do this and mastered it at will?
In the Amazon, they say that we have 9 lifetimes, like the jaguars, like the cats do. We have 9 lives in this life. And, that's variable. You could have 5 or 20. But we die and we're reborn in this life many times. And we all know people that refuse to die to who they were in high school. Maybe you were the high school beauty queen and that you peaked out at high school. And so you're always going to live in the shadow of who you were in that moment of glory or and we all have friends that are still stuck in the past, that could not allow that self to die and to move on and be reborn and be surprised who you're becoming again. So but this is how we describe people. We describe people by who they were. But if you're in a gathering of shamans, for example, you might, and I've heard them speak like this. One of them said to me, "Oh, Alberto, the last time we saw you was a long time ago. Remember, we were together around the sacred fire." And one of us went, "Oh no, did you know what happened to Alberto?" And he said, "No, Alberto, he had to incarnate." So he had to take a body again. So the transparency, the veils between the worlds become very subtle. And today in the West, we have an addiction, a very strong addiction to a new religion that we have to be very careful about. And that religion is called materialism or science. That if we cannot measure it and objectify it, it's not real. And now when I talk to physicists, they totally get what I'm saying. They say, "Yeah, Alberto, 95% of the universe is invisible. It's called dark matter and dark energy. We can't see it." So when you talk about the invisible world, we know that most of what we perceive is that 5% that we perceive as visible and measurable is only a very small slice of the pie. So this is what the shamanic lessons teach you. How do we operate in both worlds, the visible and the invisible? They're both part of the natural world, but there's a visible component to it and an invisible component to it.
And the shamans, they're able to track this invisible world very well. And you even said that they'll go into this invisible world and they'll track the masters who will help them find the answers. Are you aware of who are these masters that they refer to in the invisible world?
Yeah, the one thing about the masters the ones who defied death, the time masters, they were able to choose when they return. And they continue working from the spirit world. They are thriving communities of non-biological beings that still have an energy body and that continue to work in those realms, not only with us, because when we think about our guides, we are talking about guides that are here to help us get through this reality. But there's worlds in the invisible world. There are realms, there are cities, there are gatherings, there are temples, there are sacred gatherings of people. There's a whole agenda that you can live on the other side and not just waiting to reincarnate in the body again. So you want to be part of the action. The trouble is that when we die unconsciously, we get caught in what the Tibetans call the bardos, the in-between places. And we don't remember that there's a whole adventure to be had without a body. And then the next consciousness we have is when we drop into the womb somewhere.
They also talk about the lower world, where it is the time past, and that's where the ancestors also lie, where we have access to our ancestors. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the the cosmology of the shamans talks about three worlds. There's an upper world, a middle world where we live, and then a lower world. And they associate that with time. Time past is the lower world. Time to come is the upper world, or invisible worlds. And in the lower world is where it's the collective unconscious that the Jungian psychologists speak about. This is where all of the ancestors, their memories and the knowledge of the ancients and all of the demons and goblins and also all of the deeply buried treasures are in this place in the lower world, where you have to learn to master the journey to your own lower world so that you don't keep bumping it into it in our material world. You've got to reconcile, to heal your own wounds inside your heart and in your lower world, so you don't end up marrying it or working for it as your boss or having it be acted out through your children or your partner.
Becomes your nightmare.
Your dream becomes your nightmare, yeah. So I had a friend of mine, she was telling me, Alberto, I miss the man I married, but I don't miss the man that I'm divorcing. And they're both the same person, of course.
Yeah.
So this is why that journey to the lower world, to the realms of Inanna, to the inner world is so important, because we want to heal within. And if we don't heal it within, if you don't heal it, you're going to end up marrying it.
Also, I would add to that, you talked about how when we embrace Mother Earth and Father Sky, we also heal a lot of those relationships, even the earliest relationship, such as the one with our parents, our mother and father. When we heal our relationship with Mother Earth and Father Sky, why is that?
Well, this is the indigenous cultures have rites of passage. And the rites of passage are biological. One set of rites of passage, you come of age, you become a man, a woman, a parent, you go through menopause, or they are initiatory, they're shamanic. So at around the age of 13, boys and girls, young men, young women, go through a rite of passage where they release their mothers in a fire ceremony or in a water ceremony, of releasing their biological mother and taking the earth as their great mother that has never left them, will never leave them. And they release their fathers, maybe in a fire ceremony, and embrace Father Sky as the father that will never abandon them. Now, if you don't do that, you still want mommy to be there for you when you're 35. You don't get over your mommy issues, and there's nothing more boring than a 45 or 50-year-old person that's still dealing with mommy daddy issues. Like, come on, let's get on with it. So these rites of passage, we have lost them in the West. We don't know how to help somebody to die. We think that death is a terminal experience, when death is just a crossing. I remember going to visit a friend's father who was dying, and my friend's family refused to touch the grandfather. They thought that death might be contagious. So we've lost these important rites of passage in the West, and especially the one where we set our mother free. Because after the age of 13, your mother can be your friend, but nothing can be mommy anymore. And then we end up projecting that onto Mother Earth.
Why 13 in specific? Is there a reason for that?
12, 13, that's the early menopause, your first bleeding as a woman. And even though today girls are beginning to menstruate much younger because of the chemicals in our water and in our food, but that's when you start going through your puberty. It's not fixed in years, it's fixed in your unique particular stage that you're in.
The biology. So what are some of those rituals that, we can apply in the Western world to go through our rite of passage? And I can imagine people can do this at any age now if they want to let go of their mommy and daddy issues.
Yeah, go through your puberty rites. If you end up marrying or dating somebody, if you're a woman and that's dating a guy that didn't go through his rites of manhood, whenever he gets upset, he's going to go back to pouting like a 12-year-old. Because he got stuck there. He never completed that passage. If you're dating a woman who never went through her rites of womanhood, then you're going to be dating a princess, and princesses don't age very well. Got to become queenly. So this is what we need to recover in our world today, so that we can go through the process of becoming whole and empowered. And if we don't go through the rites of passage, we don't become empowered. We cannot dream our world into being. Then life becomes, if you don't go through your puberty rites as a young man, then success means having more toys than everybody else does. So this is so important today. And many of the rites of passage involve fire. So I'm going to share one of these with you, which is a fire ceremony. Is that okay if we share that?
I got it right here.
Okay, you got your candle there.
Got it.
So remember, we've been sitting by the fire for 1 million years. It was only 75 years ago that we had light bulbs. Prior to that, for millions of years, the world was only lit by fire, by candlelight, by firelight. It's interesting because the light of a fire will turn on the production of melatonin. That orange red light will turn on melatonin production. But the blue light, like you have in a cell phone or a digital device, will let your brain think that it's daybreak and throw your cycles off completely. So if you're checking emails in the middle of the night, it's going to throw your biological clock off, because blue light is associated with dawn. So we sat around the fire, we made love around the fire, we told stories, delivered babies, helped the dying around the fire. So this is almost in our DNA. And the fire keepers were the most important members of the community, because we didn't learn how to make fire until about 250,000 years ago. But we learned how to use fire 750,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So
We didn't know how to sustain it.
the what?
We didn't know how to sustain the fire. We just knew how to create it.
We could sustain the fire. We had to travel. Remember, we were nomadic hunter-gatherers, so we would keep the fire in embers and blow on it and help it catch again. If the fire went out while you were the keeper of the fire, you might not discover it for another 10,000 years. The future of your tribe was at stake. And today, how many of us know how to make fire today without a match? But anyway, yeah, you got it. So the fire is humanity's most ancient ceremony. So to do that, remember that the ancients understood that when they put a log in the fire, that they were setting free the bands of sunlight that had wrapped themselves around the trunk of a tree as the earth moved around the sun. That they were setting the bands of sunlight free again. And that this was what happened when we died as well, that our light was set free again. So the idea of healing and of release from trauma, repairing trauma, and today trauma is as common as air. We're all dealing with trauma. The idea with trauma is that you want to recover the light that is wrapped up around that tragic, dramatic story. We want to set the energy free and recover it and bring it to ourselves. So to do that, we use a stick. I like these little sticks that where you can use a toothpick or even a little piece of paper rolled up. And it's known as a death arrow. And what you do is you blow into it whatever it is that you are releasing, if it's mommy or daddy or a lover or a partner or a job or even a diagnosis or an illness, blow it into the stick. But you got to blow a feeling into it, not just the name of a person or of a situation. You got to blow an emotion into it. And this is called the death arrow. Whatever it is that you want to put in the fire, that you're ready to let go of, ready to allow to die. So you can move on with your life. Sometimes it's a job, it's a relationship, a friendship, a relative, a loved one that may have passed, or even a belief system or a thought form. And then you hold it to the fire. And I'm going to show you a more advanced form of doing this. And then allow the fire to set free the light that's been wrapped around that story that you had of what mommy did or what they didn't do or what you were supposed to get or how nobody sees you, whatever the story is. It's a disempowering story. And release it to the light. And these stories, according to legend, impact our heart center, our heart chakra. So very carefully, and this is an advanced practice, you can clear your heart center without burning yourself, very carefully, and release that to the fire. And then make sure that you extinguish it somewhere safe. Don't set yourself on fire, please. Not today.
We don't want any lawsuits out here, please.
Yep. And then the next step is to take that fire, that light into your heart center. Fill it with that love, that light, that power. So you pass your hand through the light, through the fire. And this is an intention. The intention is for you to recover the light, the tea, the power that you compromised, that you lost. Three times. taking your power back, your medicine. And then let's do a little meditation together with the drum. Gentle breath, just any regular yogic breaths. I am my breath. I am my breath. I am my breath. And Emilio, you know, today we are the new shamans. We're the ones that we've been waiting for. Everything that I've said to you today and all of our listeners, our audience, is familiar to you because we've sat together around a sacred fire before in times past. We keep returning. Remember, we keep returning. You were not always born your skin color, your nationality. We have been black, white, brown, Australian, Aboriginal, Inca, Andean, Hopi, all of these. We have come at this time to help the world, humanity, go through a very difficult transition. We didn't come here to spend another year in therapy or disempowered. We came here to dream a new world into being. And to do that, you have to do your own personal healing. But it cannot be the story of your life. You cannot be working on yourself until you're healed enough to be able to co-create with spirit. You've got to do it as you go along. And this is what brings the great healing. You cannot wait until you find your meaning or your purpose in your life. You've got to go for mission. What is the mission that you came here to serve? If you journey back to the moment of your conception, the moment that you came into physical, biological form, you remember that contract that you made with spirit before you were born, of what you came here to learn, what you came here to explore, what you came here to give, to offer, what kind of adventures and journeys you came here to have. And the minute that you awaken that again, you've stepped back into your destiny. Everything begins to arrange itself now to support your destiny, and not only a destination. A destination is a better looking partner than the one we have, or a nicer job, or a nicer house, or a bigger car, or smaller. A destiny is your holy, sacred mission. And then everything supports you. Everything becomes so.
The universe conspires in your favor. Beautiful words, brother.
The universe always conspires on your behalf as long as you are in service to this, what is known to the shamans as the sacred dream. Not the personal dream any longer, but the sacred dream. Because the personal dream eventually always turns into a nightmare if it's only about you.
Yeah. What does the next generation of shamans look like in your perspective?
They look like you. And they look like all of the people. We're the neuro shamans. We're digital shamans. We are, you know, we're steeped in the brain. We know the sacred medicine work. We are the new generation of shamans. You particularly. I'm an old generation. I was maybe one of the pioneer explorers, but you are the torchbearer. Your generation is the torchbearers of the new sacred wisdom that the planet is so in need of right now. And not just shaking rattles and waving feathers, but of the deep sacred wisdom that you bring forth.
Yeah. And we needed beautiful minds and hearts like you to hold the door open for us to walk through. So greatly appreciate it, Alberto. And we end every podcast with a segment called The Final Trio, which are rapid fire questions that you can answer in any way that you want. Before that, I would love for people that are listening to tune in more to your work. I'm just starting to follow the whole Four Winds path, and it's a beautiful journey. Where would you send people to connect with you further?
Where would I send people to?
Connect, yeah.
Yeah, well, come visit our website. We have a lot of free material in it. It's called thefourwinds.com. The FOURWINDS, thefourwinds.com. And you start wherever you are. But the place to begin is by saying yes to that calling that you have, to embark on the hero's journey. And they call it among the shamans, the hummingbird journey. Because the hummingbirds migrate. They migrate from Chile, from Brazil, all the way to Canada, and they're not even supposed to be able to fly. But they say yes to their calling. And they don't think, well, there are no flowers to suck on until we get to Cuba. What are we going to do? They go. Say yes to your calling. Step into your medicine. And if you want to learn with us, we have many online courses at thefourwinds.com. And we still do expeditions to the Amazon and the Andes. But the great expedition.
I'll have to join you in one of those.
Come and join us. We're going in a month. And of course, the great expedition that you already signed up for is the one beyond death. So prepare for that one.
I love that. So the final trio, the first two are personalized to you, to the guest, and the last one we ask at the end of every show. So the first one is, what is your greatest giveaway in this lifetime?
Oh, my greatest giveaway is to share the wisdom that you already have deep within your heart. Share by your behavior and your actions, and not only with your words.
And what is one question, if you were to speak for the shamans that you have surrounded yourself with in this life, what is one question that they still ask themselves every single day?
The deep and enduring question, of course, is who am I? Who am I? And that's the question that every spiritual tradition asks. And I love the answer that the poet Rumi came up with, where he says, "For I have ceased to exist. Only you are here, the spirit. Only you are here. I have ceased to exist." I'm working on that one.
Thank you for that. The final question, we call this the time capsule question. And it was interesting because as I was reading your book, The Heart of a Shaman, you explained that you journeyed out into your future and you actually left a time capsule for yourself for you to discover during the last days of your life. So this question we ask at the end of every show, and it basically requires us to journey out into the future around 15 or 20 years down the line. And I chose those dates because that is when the young generations now are going to be stepping more into leadership positions around the world and really spearheading this new earth. And if you were given the opportunity to create and leave behind a time capsule for these next generations, and you can include anything that you wanted in there, it could be non-physical, it could be physical, it could be a teaching, a poem, it could be a book, whatever comes to mind. It's infinite possibilities. But this time capsule is going to be opened by the leaders of tomorrow. And with that, they're going to be acquired and equipped with tools or wisdom or guidance to go into the next era of humanity. What would you include inside of the time capsule?
I would leave a fruit from that tree of wisdom that our mythology says we were kicked out of the garden. We were punished for eating. That tree of knowledge. I would leave one of those fruits, which is a golden fruit. And it is the fruit that gives you.
That's powerful. Alberto, thank you so much for your timeless wisdom, and for your, as you call it, your Latino heart that it's felt through the screen, brother. And I greatly appreciate you for doing all this pioneering work. And it's such a pleasure and honor to get the chance to get to know you and share you with the world. So thank you. And I would love to do this again in the future. Maybe in Spanish, en español, quién sabe.